Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So this game will be against Runinja, and just as a reminder again, if you didn't watch my previous video, I will be saying that I'll not be hosting a Simul this Friday, but it'll be okay because you'll be okay. You'll be improving silently, and well, you get your freedom, so do your own thing. But in the game, I played knight to f3, the Reti opening. Ooh, this one I advocate for. The move b3. I'm not doing much. This doesn't do much. I'm just getting my pieces out. e3 and c4. So I'm setting up this kind of structure, bringing my knight out here. So this kind of structure. So after c5, I take and I bring my other knight out. And after knight takes, you can think about this position two ways, but either bishop takes or pawn takes, both look fine. I take with the bishop because I want to be able to play d4, right? And now, with the move e6, this gives me a sort of consideration, right? Because immediately I look at this and I think about this juicy square, right? So first of all, when I get to this position, I'm like, okay, what happens if knight to e5, right? And let's say knight d7, and what happens if bishop to b5, right? But here there's knight to f6, and black saves the protection and gets ready to play a6. So black is in good shape here. But what if I trade a pair off and then do the same thing? Right? So now it gets tricky because black has to find this move a6, right? Black has to sense that, okay, I'm going to go for that king over there. So now I'm going to go queen h5 and queen e7, and now bishop to e2. I'm going to go like this because I want to bring my bishop out this way. So that is my goal. And if bishop takes g2, what happens? Rook g1, bishop moves back, and I play bishop to f3. I'm not scared that I lost a pawn because, well, look at all this pressure, right? So there is compensation for this one pawn, that my rook is extremely active. So that was what I was planning. But knight d7 happened, and I was like, whoa, I'll take that. I'll go bishop to b5, and I'll make sure that that knight goes down, because now if bishop to c8, then what? Queen to f3, checkmate, and a rook. So there's plenty of threats. So the only way, a6, I'm going to take king e7, and I'm going to play bishop to c6. Now there are so many moves I could have played in this position. I could have played maybe queen to h5, go for f7. I could just castle if I wanted to, because after f6, trying to scare the knight away, I'd still play bishop to c6, so I'd be okay. And I'd also be able to play d4 as well, maybe hinting at taking and queen d6. You never know, right? But I played bishop to c6 because I wanted to trade bishops and secure that square from my knight. So after queen c7, I brought my other guy in, and after bishop takes c6, I had a small debate, but instinctively I said, okay, check, king d8, and this. But is it worth it, right? You have to think of yourself, is the sacrifice worth it? And it is. But did I think this far? Not really. I just said, it's okay. But after something like bishop to e8, I missed this move. Queen to d5. going to take the rook. So I missed that move. That's why I thought, maybe not worth it. So I was wrong, but that's okay, right? We still take with a knight. We move back, and we're safely up a piece, right? If you count the pieces right now, we're up this knight. So now I just slowly improve. Knight c4. Okay, you want to get a pawn. I will. Now, first of all, I could play here, but I was a little bit worried about bishop c3 and rook g6, right? Coming here and here. I could play g3, but, well, king d7, I wasn't sure about if there was some sort of thing that black had. I was just a little bit worried. So after, well, not this variation. So I decided, why not just go for a queen trade? Make things simpler. So after take, I'm just trying to trade off pieces now, right? Because, like I said, in principle, if you're up material, right, since I'm up a bishop, you trade. And this is what I'm doing. And I think this move is very important because it solidifies the fact that this pawn is on a dark square, and it makes it much easier for this bishop to target. So h5, rook to f4, okay. I could have also played bishop to d4 and went for b6, but I also kind of felt like this pawn was kind of weak too, because if rook c8, well, rook to b4, right? Go for that pawn. But instead, king to d7, I traded, I went for another pawn, I brought my other rook because I wanted to play c6 and here, but now I get the chance to take it even with trading rooks. I bring my king up, I start gobbling up these pawns, and our friend Runinja resigns. So what was the main sort of bad ending to this game? Well, it was the move knight d7. That was the wrap on the game, right? A6 had to be the move played. There was practically almost no other move to be played. Knight c3, you could have played knight c6 here, which could have also prevented it, or knight f6 and develop with knight to d7. They should all work, but giving me this diagonal, giving me the play, was more than enough for me to work with and just gobble pawns, execute things, make plans, and do with what I could do. So let's go to the next game against Runinja. And this was a Dutch, right? Bishop f4, knight f6. And here my plan is, well, I get my pieces out and I get my knight out. So eventually I want to play e5. That's the goal. It's always the goal. Sometimes in the Dutch you want to play c5. Sometimes in the Dutch you want to play g5. It really depends where you're at in the game. But after knight f3, I had a few moves here, right? I could have played knight to h5. The reason I didn't play it was because I didn't think about it. All I thought about in my mind was the move knight to e4. Right? But knight h5 would have done much better. Because if bishop g5, I could actually think about taking on d4, right? And if white plays bishop to e3, well, I just play f4 then, and I take on the next move. So what happened instead? Knight to e4. I wanted to bait our friend Runinja to take, and if you go back somewhere, I'll take, and I'm having a fun time. So, of course, our friend Runinja didn't fall for that. E3. And I said, okay, I'm going to push. Because if I push, it looks pretty decent, right? And now bishop to h2. So Here I would have also inserted the move rook to d1, controlling the file as an in-between move, right? Because controlling the file is important, right? But we don't know how important it is until it actually does something. So if queen to e7, knight to d5, there's suddenly a lot of power on this d file. So that's why I would suggest, whenever there's an open file and there's a piece to be attacked, think about it and maybe do it. In the game, bishop h2, and here I said, let's take, because if queen takes c3, I'm going to castle, I'm going to go for e4, I'm going to go for the discovery on the queen. But instead, pawn takes c3 happened, and here I slowly trudged my way to victory. So here, what I think I should have done is I should have played king to h8. I should have avoided the c5 stuff, right? Because if b6 happens, c5 can happen, and our friend Runinja can get rid of what looked to be like a very bad pawn structure, right? So keep in mind, I should have played king to h8 first. But instead, b6, I played bishop to e6. But here I allowed something that I shouldn't have. Queen to b5. And all of a sudden, after queen to e8, knight to g5, there's bishop to f3, right? And there's attack on the bishop. And suddenly things look kind of shaky for me. So I shouldn't have allowed that. What I should have played is the move knight to a5, because after queen to b5, c5, and the queen is once again cut off from the rest of the action. So what I should have done, that is what I should have done. But after rook d1, this happened, and I got to execute my thing anyways. e4, rook d8, I was slowly outplaying our friend Runinja, right? Especially with this weak pawn, e4, I just started building pressure, right? e5, bishop h6, I could have also played knight c6, right? Gang up on this really weak pawn. I could have also played bishop to f7. So there were some better decisions that I could have made, but instead I went for the knight because I saw it as a vulnerable piece. If you move back, I'm going to take on c4 with either the knight or the bishop. But after bishop f4, I was like, okay, and I'll play queen g5 because after this, I take and queen to e3. I put some pressure. I play king to g7 to prepare this move bishop takes c4, right? And after a3, I go for the kill. Takes, takes, I trade rooks, trade queens, and here I'm up a lot of material. I take, I bring my king in, and I just keep pushing, right? Because there's always time to push like a maniac. So what was the main idea in this game that allowed me to win, right? So first of all, it had to do with knight to h5. I could have done that. I missed that. So our friend Runinja should have played e3 here and accepted the fact that this setup, this looking position was bound to happen, right? Especially that white has rook to d1. So then in the later stages of the game, right, rook d1 here, and I feel like what won me the game was this sort of pawn structure, right? Especially giving me the time to play knight a5, c5, and all this space, right? I was able to gradually make progress. I was able to bring my bishop onto this open diagonal. I was able to get a piece, and I found my coordination quick because, well, I had a plan. And our friend Runinja was kind of struggling with the pawn structure. So it's hard to say, but tough game, right? But I will see you guys very soon.